It was about 18 years ago in the summer. I had just started dating my now husband, and it was the start of a Bon break. Bon is an annual holiday in Japan when the spirits of families and ancestors are believed to return to visit the living. This Buddhist event usually takes place from August 13th to the 16th. During this period, many people go back to their family home and visit family graves to honor the spirits of their ancestors and loved ones. Anyway, we had planned to drive from the eastern part of Hokkaido to a city called Yubari. It was only a 2 to 3 hour drive, and it was a last-minute decision, so we didn't book any hotels. We got there and the weather was perfect, so we went sightseeing in places like the famous coal mine and such. Before we knew it, it was 6 p.m. We went looking for a place to eat, but what we didn't realize was that the population in Yubari City had been in decline for some time now. As a result, many shops and restaurants were already closed, and we got lost as we were searching. We ended up in a place that was basically abandoned, with old empty houses and shut-down hotels and stores. The atmosphere was eerily quiet, and we didn't see a single soul. There were barely any lights, and when we looked at the time, it was already 10 p.m. We were exhausted, and we stopped at an empty train station and got on our phones to look for a place to crash for the night. We sat in silence, too tired to even talk. Fog had descended outside, and we were starting to feel quite anxious when my husband noticed there was a taxi parked in the distance. Assuming the driver was a local, we were optimistic that he would know of a hotel somewhere close by where we could stay. My husband came back after 5 minutes saying, "Apparently if we drive up this mountain, there's a hotel." Boy, were we relieved. We started the engine and got on our way. Not sure of the distance, but we drove for quite a while up the mountain road. After a lot of bends and curves, we finally saw a light blue sign with the hotel name on it on the right-hand side. There was a parking space on the ground floor, and the rooms were up on the second floor, kind of like a lot of love hotels around Japan. We didn't even care about how dirty and old it was. We just wanted to take a bath, rest, and go to bed. The room was about 22 square meters, and the TV was tiny. I remember there being a lot of dust everywhere. After eating the food we bought at a convenience store, I wanted to take a bath, but not only were the lights in the room really dark, so was the one in the bathroom. I was too scared to take a bath by myself, so I asked my husband to come with me, and we both took the quickest shower ever. Feeling a little bit refreshed, we walked back into the room to organize our things, when for some reason we smelled cigarette smoke. Neither of us had smoked since entering the room, but there were 2 of them in the ashtray. "Whose are these?" I said out loud, then immediately got a bad feeling and yelled, "Check for our wallets!" My husband quickly went to look, but they weren't stolen. So, we were left to assume that the ashtray hadn't been cleaned out from the previous customers who had stayed in that room. We decided to go to bed so we can wake up early to go home. As I mentioned earlier, even with the lights on, the room was really dark, so we decided to keep them on while we slept. But 5 minutes later, I noticed something and asked my husband, "Hey, we turned off the lights in the bathroom, right?" "Yeah, we did." We saw a light coming from there. We both got out of bed to go check it out and to turn the lights back off. Nothing was out of place when we got there, but our uneasiness mounted. I was laying in the bed by the TV on the right side of the room, and my husband was in the other bed by the window on the left side of the room. Even though we were both exhausted, we couldn't seem to fall asleep. We just laid there, waiting for the time to pass. All of a sudden, I felt a couple of little pokes on my right toe. I was just thinking that it was from all of the walking we did that day, when the little pokes soon turned into strong tugs. It didn't feel like a hand was pulling on my leg. It was something else that I can't explain. I said to my husband, "My leg! Something's pulling my leg!" My husband switched beds with me, but then I heard him yell out in surprise too, so the same thing must have happened to him. It was the age of flip phones back then, and we both downloaded an image of the omamori, a kind of Japanese good luck charm, set it as our wallpaper, and laid there frozen with our phones clutched to our chest. The eerie thing was that the hotel was so quiet. Not a single sound came from anywhere, which made things extra scary. But soon, my fatigue won over and I finally drifted to sleep. To this day, I still don't know whether this was a dream or not, but I saw a middle-aged man wearing a suit. Maybe he was waiting for a woman, or he was at the hotel by himself, but he was sitting on the lounge and staring at me. His face was expressionless. He just sat there, looking at me. Although it felt strange, I didn't feel any fear or feel like he was someone dangerous. All of a sudden, I woke up. Something really surprised me, and my eyes flew open. That something was, well, someone stroked my leg. It wasn't rough. It was gentle, like how you'd stroke a child's head. I looked over at my husband, but he was dead asleep in his bed. We had switched beds prior to falling asleep because something was pulling my leg, but for some reason, we were back in our original beds. And one more thing. When I opened my eyes after feeling someone stroke my leg, I smelled a sweet smell of aftershave, the kind old men use, in the room. I couldn't see anyone, but I could feel someone there. I think it was only about 5 a.m., but I had reached my breaking point. I woke my husband up and I told him we were leaving. There was a small door to the left of the bathroom with a hole big enough to stick a hand through. A sign told us to put money through that hole and the door to the room would open so we could leave. Thinking back, we didn't even call the hotel to make a booking, and no one called us when we entered our room, so we had no idea who was manning the hotel. We were both really eager to get out of there. I put 6,000 yen by the hole and looked away for a split second. Just a split second. But I saw something that was so pale it looked almost blue come out of it and grab the money. I couldn't tell whether they were gloves, but it freaked me out. Nothing made sense in this hotel. I mean, think about it. We didn't tell anyone we were leaving at the time, and the hotel didn't even have a reception area, so even if we wanted to, there was no one to notify. We were up at a ridiculously early hour, and yet, as soon as I put the money down, someone was there to collect it straight away. Thankfully, our car was still in the parking lot. We climbed in, and as we drove out into the morning light, I looked back at the hotel and froze in shock. It looked like there were 4 or 5 rooms in total, but the windows in all rooms except for the one we stayed in were boarded up. Only our room had curtains. The grass was overgrown, there were weeds growing all around, and we could tell this place hadn't been properly maintained for quite some time. When I looked up at our room, I saw the curtains swaying. Driving back down the mountain, we saw several Buddha statues along the way. Did the taxi driver hex us, or was it just bad luck to land in such an isolated, dilapidated hotel? I have so many questions about that night, but I can only answer one of them. I vaguely remembered the name of the hotel, so when I got home, I Googled it. And apparently, it's a famous haunted place. If you ever plan to go into the countryside or a place you've never visited before, make sure you plan your trip in advance.